Hi everyone, welcome back for another guided reading notes session. This section that we're going to work on today is 4.1. It's about how Spain builds an American empire. So the first question on your timeline says, what was the significance of Columbus's voyages? And this is actually very similar to a question we've had in a previous guided reading, and the answer is very similar as well. The idea is that with Columbus figuring out, or at least running into, lands to the west, began a process of European colonization in the Americas. Other Europeans wanted to go and stake claims, get land, find gold, convert Christians, so on and so forth. Second question is, Magellan himself died in the Philippines, but what was the importance of the voyage his crew completed? Magellan didn't make it all the way as it says, but his crew was the first group that we know of that were to circumnavigate the world, and that means they sailed all the way around the planet in one direction, got all the way back to where they started. Now here's a map of Magellan's routes. It's if you follow the dark blue, he goes down along the coast of Africa a bit, then goes around the southern point of South America, crosses up through the Pacific Ocean, makes a rather fatal stop at the Philippines, and then eventually comes back down around through the Indian Ocean, around the southern tip of Africa, and back up to Europe. Next question is, what factors helped the Spanish defeat the Aztecs? There's three main things that you need to know here. Firstly, they had better weapons, often made from steel. You can see in this picture, you can see armor, you can see pikes, those are those long spears. They have swords, even their horses have armor. The natives in the Americas didn't have this yet, and so it made the Spanish in a superior technological position to be able to win when things broke down in a violent conflict. Another thing to think about is how they had aid from the natives, and you can see in this picture there's a Native American with the Spaniards here. Some of the enemies of the Aztecs didn't really like them so much, and so they were willing to help the Spaniards fight against them. The Spaniards were greatly outnumbered, but when they had more help and more support from other natives, they were in a better position to defeat the Aztecs. And then finally, another thing that really helped the Spaniards was that European diseases killed many natives because they had no immunity. Basically, Europeans had been exposed to and around diseases along with Asians and Africans. They've been close enough to each other that they've been around each other's diseases and had been exposed to them and had grown some immunities to them, right? But the Native Americans, the people in the Americas, had been away from other cultures, other civilizations, and other diseases for so long that the diseases themselves had evolved to the point where those people weren't used to those diseases and had never been exposed to them before. And some of the ones that they often refer to are measles and smallpox, which had a devastating effect to the Native Americans and killed millions and millions of people in the Americas, which also made the Aztecs susceptible to a Spanish defeat. Next question says, how did the Spanish treat the peoples they conquered? Well, there's a couple different points we want to make here. First, they quote unquote created a large mestizo population. You can see in that bottom picture there's a white Spanish man with a Peruvian Native American woman, and they have had a baby together. Now, we say create. A lot of the Spaniards that came over were men. Not many women came over originally anyway. And they wanted wives. So they married along with the Native American women that were here, but there was also a lot of rape. There was a lot of forced marriage. It wasn't always a voluntary thing, right? And that's why I put created in quotes here, because really it's more like it's exploited and used the women to create a mestizo or mixed population here. Another thing that the Spanish did while they were here is they imposed their culture, and in particular, the language of Spanish, right? We all still speak Spanish today. That's a vestige from when the Spaniards were conquering this area, but also from religion. right? Christianity, and more specifically the Spanish, were very, very Catholic, right? And they built missions such as the one pictured here to try and convert and save the natives from eternity in hell, or so they believed. Another thing that they did was they exploited natives as workers. So we'll talk a little bit about the encomiendas a little bit later, but they wanted the gold that was in the earth. They wanted to get rich, and they were willing to subject natives to violence, to the threat of violence, to force them to work for them, and to oftentimes be in miserable working conditions. They didn't care. They wanted the riches. They wanted to get gold and send it back to Spain to increase their wealth. Number 5 is what was unique about the Spanish colonization of the lands of New Mexico. So as the Spanish found gold in certain areas of the Americas, like in South America around where we are now and a few other places, they thought, well, hey, if there's gold here, there's going to be gold in lots of other places. So they started exploring other areas, and they went further north into what's today modern-day New Mexico, parts of California, Arizona, which are the southern western parts of the United States. But they didn't find gold there. And if you've ever been to that part of the United States, you'll know that a lot of it is just desert. Not all of it, but quite a bit of it. And so they didn't want to send a lot of resources and land to that land because it didn't have the riches that they want. So instead, they start to send priests, right? So the idea here is that in this area, like in the lands of New Mexico, the exploration and colonization was mostly done by priests, right? They would go there to convert the natives. And that's what you can see in this picture here. Some monks or Franciscan friars trying to baptize a native child. Okay. Number 6, final question. What was the long-term consequence of abolishing the encomienda system? So the encomienda system is one of your vocabulary words. You got to know what it is. It's basically when the Spanish had natives working under them. The Spanish were the landlords. The natives were the laborers, right? After a while, this system was abolished. It was stopped. They decided that this wasn't working, that this wasn't good. And so all of a sudden they went from having all this free or almost free labor from the Native American slaves or workers. They had no labor source anymore. And so where did they turn to get labor? Well, they didn't start doing it themselves. They started to turn to Africa, right? And to get Africans to replace the Native Americans. And shortly after that, you start to have this huge African slave trade where you have traders going from Europe to Africa, other Africans assisting in enslaving and kidnapping those Africans, putting them on boats, and then sending them over to the Americas to do the work there as slaves. Okay, that's about all that we have for today. I will see you tomorrow, and we will finish then.